Before time was counted, before the first kingdoms rose and fell, there was a man whose name the heavens remembered long after the world forgot. His name was Enoch. You have heard of him perhaps, buried deep within the old scriptures, a shadow among the ancestors of Noah, mentioned only in passing, yet the few words written about him hold a mystery so vast it could shatter the boundaries of faith and history alike. For the text says, Enoch walked with God, and then he was not, for God took him. What does that mean? Did he die? Or did something far stranger occur? The story of Enoch is not confined to a single line of Genesis, for there exists a book that claims to preserve his own voice, his own visions, his own journey beyond the veil of creation itself. It is called the Book of Enoch, a scripture older than Moses, older than the prophets, yet one that was erased, condemned, and hidden for thousands of years. Few know its words, fewer still understand their meaning. But those who read it whisper that it tells of beings from the sky, of ancient teachers who descended to earth, and of forbidden knowledge that changed mankind forever. Why was this book removed from the Bible? Why did early priests and scribes choose to silence the story of a man who spoke with heaven? The answers lie not in one truth, but in a web of fear, faith, and control. For Enoch's writings did not describe a distant God ruling from clouds, they revealed a structured cosmos, filled with watchers, angels, and realms of light and fire, a universe alive and conscious. It was a cosmology far too vast, far too dangerous for those who sought to define the divine. Imagine being among the first readers of these ancient words, opening a scroll that claimed to reveal what the angels themselves taught humanity. The Book of Enoch does not begin with creation, nor with sin, but with rebellion. It speaks of celestial beings who looked down upon the earth and desired to know it. These were the watchers, guardians of the human world, who crossed the line between heaven and earth. And it was Enoch who saw their coming, who spoke with them, and who recorded their fate. But this is not merely myth, for in the deserts of Ethiopia, among faded manuscripts and forgotten monasteries, the Book of Enoch survived while the rest of the world forgot it existed. When explorers brought it to Europe in the 18th century, scholars were stunned. They had found an ancient text quoted by early Christians and even by the Apostle Jude, yet absent from the modern Bible. As translators unfolded its brittle pages, they discovered stories that predated Genesis, names of angels never heard before, and prophecies that mirrored the book of Revelation written thousands of years later. It told of knowledge not meant for mankind, of cosmic order and divine rebellion, of stars that move like living minds, and of a God whose messengers could fall. The Church once knew of this text. Early fathers like Tertullian, Clement, and Origen debated its meaning. Some called it holy, others called it heresy. By the 4th century, it vanished from the Western canon, not burned, but quietly buried under new doctrines. Only the Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved it as sacred, copying it by hand through war and famine. Why would one branch of faith guard it so fiercely while the rest buried it? What secret did it contain that made men fear its return? The Book of Enoch opens not as a fable, but as testimony, the words of Enoch, who was a righteous man, whose eyes were opened by God, who saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens. It claims not inspiration, but witness. Within its chapters Enoch speaks as one who has been shown the machinery of the universe, the flow of stars, the secrets of judgment, and the coming of a Savior figure long before the name of Christ was ever spoken. For this reason alone, the book is both venerated and feared. Many scholars dismiss it as apocalyptic poetry from the Second Temple era, yet others whisper that its content is too detailed, too structured, too scientific to be imagination. It describes the gates of the sun and moon, the measurements of the stars, the paths of light across the heavens. It names the winds of the earth, the angels who govern the elements, and the boundaries of time itself. How could a writer 2,000 years before telescopes speak with such precision, unless he remembered something we no longer understand? To read Enoch is to feel both awe and danger. It offers the comfort of faith and the thrill of forbidden truth. Its language is divine yet human, filled with humility but echoing with cosmic knowledge. The author is no prophet shouting doom, he is a scribe of heaven, a man caught between worlds. You sense his fear, he is describing the indescribable. Why would such a book threaten religion itself? Because it changes everything. It suggests that humanity's teachers were not just messengers, but beings of light who chose to descend, that the story of sin and redemption began not with Adam, but with them. It tells of the origin of evil not as disobedience, but as curiosity, of angels who desired to understand creation so deeply they broke heaven's law to experience it. It humanizes the divine, and divinizes the human, and that, for the early church, was unacceptable. So the Book of Enoch was buried. It faded from sermons and scrolls, from the tongues of priests and the eyes of scholars. Yet, like a seed sealed beneath the sands of time, it waited. And when it returned, it did so quietly, whispering its truth to a world once again hungry for mysteries that science could not explain. But the mystery does not end with its discovery. The fragments found among the Dead Sea Scrolls proved it had been read by the Essenes, the same desert sect that shaped the earliest roots of Christianity. Even the writers of Revelation may have drawn from its words. And yet, official doctrine still calls it apocrypha, still warns believers to avoid it. Why? Because within its pages, God is not distant. He is near, surrounded by countless beings of light and fire, an endless hierarchy where even angels can fall and mortals can rise. Some modern researchers claim the Book of Enoch describes ancient encounters with advanced beings, what today we might call extraterrestrial intelligences. Others see only metaphor, a spiritual drama of knowledge, temptation, and redemption. Both could be true. For the line between heaven and cosmos, between angel and visitor, is thin when viewed through ancient eyes. Perhaps that is why the text feels alive, because it speaks to both sides of us, the believer and the seeker. It tells the faithful that heaven watches still, and it tells the curious that knowledge has a cost. Every generation rediscovers Enoch, and every generation asks the same question: was this man taken because he was pure, or because he saw too much? If the story is true, why has it survived at all? Perhaps because some truths cannot be destroyed, only delayed. Perhaps the heavens themselves chose to preserve it. Every verse seems to echo with warning and promise, a message meant for a later age, perhaps ours. This book is not simply a forgotten scripture, it is a doorway. To open it is to stand where heaven and earth once met, where divine light touched mortal mind. And if its words are true, then the story of mankind is far older, far stranger, and far more divine than we have ever been told. Tonight, as you listen to these words, let the silence between them speak. Picture Enoch, the man who walked with God, standing beneath a sky filled with watchers, writing by the light of burning stars. The question is not whether his book is real, but whether we were ever meant to read it. Because once you hear his story, you can never unknow it. This is the beginning of his testimony, the first secret humanity was never meant to know. Long before prophets raised their voices in deserts, before Moses walked the mountain of fire, there was a man who did not die, yet was not of heaven either. His name was Enoch, the one who walked with God. His story begins not with miracles, but with silence, in a time when men still remembered the voices of the sky, and the earth itself seemed young. He was a scribe, a keeper of knowledge, a quiet observer of stars and seasons. The old traditions say that Enoch was different from birth, his eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and when he spoke, his words carried a weight far beyond human breath. He was neither priest nor king, yet kings sought him for counsel, and priests feared his insight. For when Enoch gazed at the night sky, he did not see distant suns, he saw order, geometry, purpose, a language written in light. The Book of Enoch tells us that before his transformation, he lived 365 years, a perfect circle of days, symbolic of the sun's own cycle. It says that during those centuries he wrote, he studied, and he listened. He walked among the people, teaching wisdom, warning them of corruption spreading through the earth. His voice was not loud, yet his words carried like wind across mountains. He spoke of divine laws written not on stone, but in the rhythm of the stars. But one night, as the texts describe, a voice called his name from above the firmament. It was not thunder, it was not dream, it was command. Enoch raised his eyes and saw what no mortal should behold, wheels of light, revolving within light, descending upon the hills of his homeland. The air turned still, the world held its breath, and in that silence, Enoch felt fear, but not terror, recognition. The ancient record says, "The winds lifted me up, and I was carried to the clouds, and there I saw the sons of heaven, who walk upon flames of fire." The watchers stood before him, vast, radiant, neither flesh nor shadow. They spoke in voices that resonated through his bones, saying, "Enoch, son of Jared, scribe of righteousness, record what you see." And so he began to write. From that moment, Enoch became a bridge between heaven and earth. He was shown the secrets of the sun and the moon, how time itself was measured by divine order. He learned the names of the holy ones who rule the elements, the angels who turn the stars in their paths, who open the gates of morning, and close the doors of dusk. He wrote that the universe is alive, that every motion of light has an intelligence guiding it, that every law of nature is a hymn of the Creator. Imagine what that meant for early humanity, a man who spoke of a cosmos filled with living forces, long before telescopes, long before science. For those who listened, Enoch's teachings were revelation, for those who feared them, they were blasphemy. But Enoch was not seeking power, he was seeking understanding. He did not command the angels, he learned from them. His book describes visions so precise they read like ancient astronomy. He speaks of 7 heavens stacked above one another, of crystal walls dividing the firmament, of rivers of fire that flow like breath through the body of creation. He describes the throne of the Most High, surrounded by lightning and voices, a sea of glass beneath it, and wheels that move with eyes all around them. These are not the words of imagination, they are the record of a witness. Some scholars argue that Enoch's visions were metaphor, an attempt to express divine order in human terms. But others whisper that what he saw was literal, a journey beyond dimensions, guided by beings whose knowledge transcended time itself. In ancient Mesopotamia, there are stories of kings who were taken to the sky and returned with wisdom. In Egypt, Thoth was said to ascend to the heavens to measure the stars and record divine law. In Greece, Hermes was called the messenger between realms. And in every culture, there is always one, the scribe, the watcher, the traveler, who walks between worlds. Could Enoch have been that archetype, the original? Was he the source from which all those later myths were drawn? The man who truly crossed the boundary of mortality and came back transformed? The Book of Enoch tells us that after being carried to the heavens, he was shown visions of what was, what is, and what will be. He saw the fall of the watchers, the corruption of mankind, and the judgment yet to come. He witnessed the architecture of heaven, not as metaphor, but as structure. In his writings, even light obeys hierarchy, every beam, every star, every wind is ruled by an appointed spirit. He speaks of places so vast they seem impossible. "And I came to a mountain of fire," he wrote, "that burned day and night, and I saw the rivers of living flame that flowed down from the throne." His words read like fragments of a dream too immense for human minds. Yet when modern readers study them, they find strange echoes of real cosmology, spheres within spheres, motion bound by invisible order, energy flowing through unseen currents. Did Enoch describe the spiritual world in the only language he had, or did he record a memory of a higher science, one lost to time? The question haunts every reader who opens the ancient scroll. In one passage, Enoch writes, "The Lord called me, and the Spirit lifted me up, and placed me before the face of the Most High." What he saw there changed him forever. When he returned to earth, he no longer aged, his skin shone faintly like glass in sunlight, his voice carried the calm of eternity. People began to fear him, not because of what he did, but because of what he knew. He spoke of realms beyond death, of judgments yet to come, and of the watchers who once stood beside men. The old traditions say he began to withdraw from the world. He spent years in isolation, writing everything he had seen. He inscribed his knowledge on tablets of stone and metal, sealing them in the mountains, warning that one day the world would again hunger for what was lost. Then, one day, he vanished. The scripture says, "He was not, for God took him." No grave, no body, no farewell. He simply stepped across the line between worlds, a man made immortal by the burden of what he had witnessed. What did it mean to be taken? Was it ascension? Transformation? Or removal, a rescue from a dying world? Some texts say he was transformed into the archangel Metatron, the highest of the heavenly scribes, the voice who records the deeds of all creation. If true, then Enoch did not just walk with God, he became part of the machinery of heaven itself. To others, his story is symbolic, a parable of enlightenment, of human mind reaching beyond the limits set by the divine. But even as symbol, it carries power. It tells us that man can rise higher than flesh, that knowledge is the path to transcendence. And so, whether as prophet or myth, Enoch's message remains the same: seek truth, even when forbidden, question, even when warned not to, walk forward, even when the road leads upward into fire. Some say he was blessed, others say cursed. Perhaps both are true. For to know what he knew is to see too much, to look beyond the veil of heaven and realize how thin it truly is. Even now, thousands of years later, his words reach across time like faint echoes in the void. The man who spoke with heaven still speaks, through his book, through the myths he inspired, through every question that refuses to die. And as you hear his story tonight, ask yourself, if you were given a glimpse beyond the stars, if you were offered the knowledge of the watchers themselves, would you take it? Or would you turn away, fearing what it might reveal? For Enoch did not turn away. He looked, and because he looked, he was changed forever. This is his journey, the story of the man who spoke with heaven. When Enoch was lifted from the earth and shown the heavens, he was not alone in his visions. For beyond the radiant halls, he saw movement upon the mountains of the world, a descent, silent and terrible. The Book of Enoch names them, the Watchers, 200 angels, mighty and bright, who gazed upon mankind with longing. They were not evil, not yet. They were beings of curiosity, sent to watch, to guide, to observe the rise of humanity. But what begins as wonder, often ends in desire. Their leader was Semjaza, the brightest among them, a commander of wisdom and flame. It was he who gathered the host upon the summit of Mount Hermon. There, beneath the starlit vault, they made a pact. The ancient text says, and they all swore and bound themselves by curses together. They vowed that none would turn back, that all would descend to earth as one. For they feared the wrath of heaven if they fell alone. The mountains shook with their oaths. Fire crowned the peaks, light split the sky, and in a storm of radiance, they crossed the boundary between worlds. The air burned as they fell, not as rebels, but as explorers, not to destroy, but to experience. They walked among men, clothed in brilliance, and the people mistook them for gods. At first, they taught, they shared their knowledge freely. They showed humanity how to till the soil, to forge metal, to read the movement of stars. They taught healing and writing, music and mathematics. The Book of Enoch lists their gifts in detail. Semjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings, Ezekiel taught the signs of the earth, Kokabel taught the constellations, Ezekiel taught the knowledge of the clouds, Penemu taught writing and wisdom, and Azazel taught men to make swords and mirrors, ornaments and weapons of war. Knowledge spread like fire across the world, beautiful and terrible. But knowledge is never neutral. The gifts of the Watchers elevated mankind, yet also poisoned them with pride. Weapons turned against neighbors, vanity consumed the hearts of kings, and the daughters of men, seeing the splendor of the Watchers, desired them. The text says, "And they took wives for themselves, each choosing one for his own, and they taught them charms and enchantments." From these unions were born the Nephilim, giants of strength and mind, who ruled with cruelty and hunger. Their power was vast, their appetites unending. Enoch saw the earth tremble beneath their feet, rivers ran red, and the cries of the innocent rose into heaven. The balance of creation began to tilt. What was meant as enlightenment became corruption. What was meant as communion became dominion. The world, once guided by wisdom, was now ruled by might. And yet, Enoch understood something few did. The fall of the Watchers was not born of hatred, but of love twisted by longing. They sought to know humanity as God knew them, to share their joy, their sorrow, their touch. But in doing so, they stepped beyond the order of heaven. Their descent was the first rebellion, not against God's power, but against his design. The heavens shuddered. The archangels looked down and saw the ruin below. Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel stood before the throne and said, "See what they have done." The earth cries out, the souls of men seek justice. And the Most High said, "Summon Enoch, my scribe, for his eyes have seen both light and shadow. He will bear the message of judgment." And so, Enoch was called once more. In his visions, he saw the Watchers in despair, beings of light, now chained by the weight of their own desires. He saw Semjaza kneeling among clouds, and Azazel cast down into the desert, bound beneath sharp stones, his eyes still burning with remorse. He saw the children of the Nephilim warring against each other, their voices like thunder in the valleys. Yet, even as he wrote these visions, Enoch felt no hatred for them. His heart was filled with sorrow, for he saw in their rebellion the reflection of mankind itself. The desire to reach higher, to see more, to understand what was forbidden, it was the same fire that burned in every human soul. Some say the Watchers were punished for lust, others say for teaching divine secrets. But perhaps their true sin was compassion, the wish to bring heaven closer to earth. In their eyes, there was no rebellion, only curiosity. And in that curiosity lies the oldest warning of all. For the Book of Enoch says, "And they became great upon the earth, and men cried unto heaven for deliverance." It was then that the decree went forth, the world would be cleansed, the Watchers judged, their knowledge scattered like ash to the winds. But before the judgment came, Enoch was shown their teachings, the very wisdom that had once illuminated mankind. He recorded every secret he could understand, every law of the stars, every symbol of power. His writings became the mirror of their sin, a record of what happens when knowledge is divorced from humility. He saw what they had taught, and he knew why heaven feared them. For if men ever mastered these arts again, they would rival the angels themselves. Perhaps that is why this story still lingers in the edges of every myth, the fire that fell from the sky, the gods who loved mortals, the wisdom that cursed its keeper. Every civilization remembers it differently, but the root is always the same, a warning against the hunger for forbidden knowledge. Enoch wrote that the watchers would not die, but be bound in darkness until the final judgment. Yet he also wrote that their teachings would survive in fragments, passed down in whispers, in symbols, in secret orders. He claimed that one day, humanity would rediscover them, and once again face the choice between illumination and ruin. And as his quill scratched across the tablets of stone, Enoch wrote words that still echo across time: "Woe to those who build knowledge without understanding, for the light they kindle will burn the world." The stars above him flickered, perhaps listening. And Enoch, looking upon the heavens, understood the paradox: knowledge is salvation, and destruction, and both are divine. Tell me, then, if you stood upon Mount Hermon, if the watchers descended before you offering the secrets of the stars, would you take their gift? Or would you turn away? Comment below, tell me which forbidden teaching you would want to learn. For the watchers fell for curiosity, the same curiosity that still burns within us. And that is why their story is also our own. When the cries of the earth reached heaven, the throne of the Most High trembled with sorrow. The world had fallen silent beneath the weight of corruption. The watchers, once radiant guardians of creation, had become shadows upon the mountains. Their children, the Nephilim, ruled with blood and fire. The songs of humanity turned to screams, and the light of heaven dimmed over the earth. It was then that God said, "Enough." The harmony of creation was broken, and only judgment could restore it. The archangels gathered before the throne: Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, beings of living flame, vast as storms. Their wings shone brighter than the sun, their voices like rivers of thunder. Michael, guardian of truth, drew his sword of light and laid its edge upon the sea of glass. Uriel, the flame of wisdom, wept for the fallen. Raphael, the healer, bowed his head in sorrow, for he knew the cure must come through destruction. Gabriel stood in silence, awaiting the command that would change heaven and earth forever. And the voice of the Eternal answered, "Summon Enoch, my scribe, for his eyes have seen both light and shadow, and his word shall deliver judgment to those who fell." Then Enoch was lifted once more. The heavens opened above him like the petals of a burning flower, winds of gold and blue surrounded him. He was carried beyond the stars, past the gates of fire and crystal, until he stood before the throne. Around him rose towers of light, the air hummed with the pulse of creation. And from that radiance came a voice that shook the soul. "Enoch, son of man, hear the word of the Holy One. Go, and speak to the watchers who have left the high places of heaven and defiled themselves with flesh. Tell them, you shall have no peace, nor forgiveness, nor mercy until the end of days. You will see your sons perish before your eyes, and the world you corrupted shall be cleansed by the waters you once blessed." Enoch fell to his knees, trembling beneath the weight of the command. Yet he rose, and descended as he was told. The clouds opened beneath him, the air burned cold. He saw the earth below, mountains scarred by war, rivers blackened with blood, and the cities of the Nephilim trembling in fear. The watchers stood upon the peaks where once they had sworn their oath. Their wings were dimmed, their crowns shattered, their eyes filled with sorrow. Semjaza stood among them, proud yet broken, his flame dim but unextinguished. Azazel was beside him, his form wrapped in chains of lightning. They bowed as Enoch approached, for though he was still a man, heaven's light burned through his flesh. He shone like a living star descending to the earth. "Enoch," said Semjaza, "scribe of God, we beg you, intercede for us. Carry our petition before the throne, that the Lord may forgive us our transgression. We have sinned, but not out of hatred. We loved what we were forbidden to love. Their voices shook the mountain. And for a moment, Enoch's heart ached with compassion, for he saw in them not rebellion, but remorse. He said, I will carry your words, but I cannot promise they will be heard. He ascended again, the sky closed beneath him. The winds roared with lamentation as he rose beyond the clouds. When he reached the halls of heaven, he carried with him their plea, written upon tablets of light. He laid them before the throne. The angels bowed. The heavens fell silent. But no voice answered. The silence itself became judgment. Then the Eternal spoke, they will not be forgiven. Their knowledge has poisoned the world. Their children have devoured the innocent. The gift of heaven was not meant for pride. For this reason, their punishment shall be eternal. And Enoch was shown visions of their fate. He saw the earth open its mouth, and the mountains split asunder. He saw rivers of fire pour through the valleys, chains of living flame descending from the clouds. The watchers cried out, their wings torn away, their voices echoing into the void. Azazel was bound hand and foot, cast into a desolate pit beneath the desert of Dudiel, beneath sharp stones that cut the sky. The angels piled heavy rocks upon him, sealing him in darkness. The Lord said, cover his face, that he may see no light until the day of fire. Semjaza was bound beneath Mount Hermon, the mountain where he had sworn the oath of descent. His prison was made of crystal, reflecting the stars he once commanded. He was condemned to watch them move above him for eternity, but never again to touch their light. Around them, the other watchers wailed, some were hurled into the abyss, swallowed by seas of black fire. Others were chained in whirlwinds that circle the earth even now, unseen, but always heard in the voice of storms. And Enoch wrote, the Lord bound them for 70 generations, until the day of their judgment, when heaven and earth shall pass away, and all shall be renewed. As Enoch beheld their punishment, he felt tears burn upon his face. These were once beings of beauty, radiant beyond mortal sight, now they were fragments of ruin. He heard their cries echo through the chambers of the deep, and though he pitied them, he knew justice had spoken. Then he was shown the cleansing of the earth. He saw clouds gather like mountains of glass, thunder roll across the heavens, and the waters of the deep rise to meet the sky. The earth groaned beneath the flood, yet in that destruction, Enoch saw peace. For the Lord said, the waters are not wrath, but mercy, they will wash the blood from the soil, and the breath of life will begin anew. And as he watched the ocean swallow the cities of men and the giants they had birthed, Enoch understood that judgment was not an ending, but a reset, a restoration of divine order. The light of heaven pierced the waters like dawn returning to a dream. Then the winds carried him higher still. He saw the great rivers of heaven, flows of light and fire, endless and alive. He saw wheels of flame turning within flame, each guided by living spirits. He saw the vault of the stars as a temple of infinite design, and upon the throne, a presence beyond description. The voice spoke once more, Enoch, you have seen the fall of perfection. Learn this truth, even angels are tested by desire. Knowledge without wisdom is corruption, power without humility is death. Remember, for the same hunger that devoured them lives in mankind. Enoch bowed low and answered, Lord, what shall I write for those who come after? And the voice replied, write this, that even in judgment, mercy is hidden. That those who fall may rise, and those who rise must learn to fall with grace. Then the vision faded. The fires dimmed, the wind ceased, and Enoch stood once more upon the quiet mountain. The sky above was still, the earth below was clean. The watchers were gone, their voices silent, their light extinguished. Only the whisper of distant thunder remained. He took up his stylus and wrote all he had seen, the councils of heaven, the tears of angels, the prisons beneath the mountains. He wrote of Azazel's chains that glowed like molten gold, of Semjaza's eyes still fixed on the stars, of the watchers who lingered in the breath of storms. And when his task was done, he sealed the tablets in the earth and said, "May those who find these words remember, even the brightest light casts a shadow." He looked to the heavens one last time and whispered, "If angels can fall, what of men?" The wind answered him, soft, sorrowful, eternal. It carried his words upward, into the dark vault of heaven, and somewhere in the deep places of the earth, the chained ones stirred in their sleep. This is the judgment of the watchers, the day heaven mourned its own creation, the day light and darkness became one. After the judgment was sealed and the world washed clean, Enoch was called once more into the higher realms. The voice that had shaken mountains spoke gently this time, "Come, Enoch, see what remains beyond the veil." And the winds obeyed. The light around him bent and opened like a gate. He rose through veils of air that shimmered as living crystal, and the earth grew small beneath his feet. The clouds folded away like curtains drawn from a secret stage. Above them waited the first of the heavens, a sky not of blue, but of silver flame. There he saw the spirits of the stars. Each one burned with awareness, singing in tones that rippled through eternity. They greeted him not as stranger, but as witness. And Enoch understood, the universe was alive, every motion of light was part of an endless conversation. The Book of Enoch says, "I beheld the storehouses of the winds, and the paths of the sun and moon, and all their circuit." He was shown the first heaven, the realm of natural law. Here the angelic keepers weighed the breath of the world. Some stirred the tides, others kindled lightning, still others measured time with golden threads that wound around the earth. Enoch saw that nothing was chance. Every leaf that fell, every gust that turned a seed to soil, every flash of dawn, was counted and known. Then he rose to the second heaven, where light takes form. The air was thick with color, woven like liquid glass. Here he saw the spirits of those awaiting judgment, the shades of the giants destroyed in the flood, bound in restless silence. They reached toward him but could not cross the river of fire that divided mercy from memory. Enoch turned away weeping, for he understood that even sorrow has its order. In the third heaven he saw paradise, a garden beyond imagining, where trees shone with inner flame and their fruits sang with voices of water. From their roots flowed a river so pure it reflected thought itself. There he saw the souls of the righteous, clothed in light, moving without shadow. Their laughter was like wind through leaves, and the sound healed the pain in his heart. "Tell them on earth," a voice said, "that joy is not lost, it only changes place." The fourth heaven was a place of wonder and terror, for here the armies of heaven assembled. Enoch saw chariots of fire whirl through clouds, each drawn by beings whose faces were lightning. Their bodies moved like flame but cast no smoke. At their center stood a mountain of sapphire, and upon it a throne of storm. Around it circled 10,000 times 10,000 angels, each crying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of spirits, who fills heaven and earth." The sound struck him to his knees. He covered his face, yet even through closed eyes the light burned, for the fourth heaven was the heart of divine power, where creation itself was renewed each moment. He was lifted then to the fifth heaven, the place of sorrowful watchers. Here dwelt angels who had not fallen, yet had doubted. They were neither condemned nor free, their eyes eternally fixed on the void below. Their wings trembled with regret. "These," the voice said, "are the ones who pitied the fallen, yet dared not join them. Their tears formed stars that wander without constellation." Enoch bowed to them, for he saw that compassion, too, can wound. Beyond lay the sixth heaven, the realm of order and command. Here he saw the hierarchy of creation, seraphim blazing like suns, cherubim like wheels of gold, often turning within rings of fire. They moved in perfect harmony, each singing a note that sustained the universe. The song was mathematics and emotion at once, sound that shaped existence. Enoch wrote, "There I saw the courses of the luminaries, how each obeys its ruler, and none transgress the appointed law." He lingered there, overwhelmed by symmetry. Every atom, every heartbeat, every orbit, was music made visible. And he thought, if one note were lost, the cosmos would unravel. Yet the melody continued, eternal and precise. Then came the seventh heaven, highest and most secret. A place where light becomes thought, and thought becomes silence. No color, no sound, only awareness like endless dawn. Here Enoch saw the throne of the Most High, not as a shape, but as presence, radiance without center or edge. Around it flowed rivers of fire, within them forms of angels beyond counting, their faces hidden, their voices folded into pure harmony. He could not stand, his spirit melted into awe. And the voice spoke again, "Behold the architecture of all things. This is the body of eternity. Nothing is lost within it, not a whisper, not a tear, not a dream. All returns to me, and from me flows again." Enoch was shown the measures of the sun and the moon, the gates of light that open each morning, and the doors of shadow that close each night. He was taught the rhythm of seasons, the balance of waters, the reason for the number of days. He wrote, "Every heavenly body moves by covenant, and every covenant has a watcher." He saw the earth suspended by unseen pillars, its heart glowing like a coal within the dark. He saw oceans breathing like lungs, drawing in light and exhaling mist. He saw lightning travel through invisible paths, rivers of energy that bind sky to soil. And he realized, what men call physics is only the echo of a hymn too vast for human ears. Then he was shown the library of heaven, halls of crystal scrolls that recorded every moment since the dawn of time. Within them he saw not ink, but light, flowing like living memory. "These are the histories of creation," said the angel beside him, "and your own words will join them." Enoch trembled, for he knew his book would become part of the very order it described. The angel led him to a balcony above the void. "Look down," he said. Enoch obeyed. Below him he saw the universe like a sea of stars, each world a reflection of another. And between them moved strands of fire, connections unseen by mortal eyes. "These," said the angel, "are the paths of destiny. Every choice, every heartbeat, every prayer, travels through them. There are no accidents, only patterns not yet understood." Enoch asked, "Why show me this?" And the voice answered, "Because men will one day forget they are part of the design. They will call the heavens empty, and themselves alone. You must remind them." He bowed his head and wept, for he saw the truth of human blindness. Even now, thousands of years later, his warning still speaks, that knowledge without wonder becomes arrogance, and faith without understanding becomes fear. He turned once more to the glowing horizon. The next revelation awaited him. When Enoch returned from the seven heavens, he was no longer the man who had ascended. His eyes held the reflection of galaxies, his voice carried the echo of thunder. Yet there was no peace in him, for though he had seen the order of creation, he had also glimpsed its unraveling. He stood upon the mountain, and the wind spoke his name. "Enoch," it whispered, "scribe of heaven, prepare yourself, for you have seen the beginning, now you must behold the end." The world around him blurred, the air thickened like glass, and once again he was lifted between the realms of earth and light. Darkness unfolded before him, not emptiness, but potential, a silence before revelation. Then, From within that void, came a brilliance like fire turned to water, and the voice of the Most High said, Behold what shall come in the last days, when the measure of creation is complete. He saw the earth beneath him again, but changed, the mountains trembling, the seas restless as living things. The stars above dimmed, and one by one they fell from the sky like tears of fire. The sun became veiled, and the moon bled light across the horizon. This, said the voice, is the great day of transformation, when all that is hidden will be revealed. Then Enoch saw the Son of Man, a figure of radiant flame, seated upon a throne of living light. Around him gathered countless hosts of angels, their wings forming a canopy across the heavens. And from that throne poured rivers of brightness that cut through the shadows of the world. Wherever the light touched, truth was exposed. Kings and beggars alike stood unveiled before it. Enoch wrote, The Lord of spirits sat upon the throne of his glory, and the books of life were opened before him. He saw the souls of the righteous rising like sparks into the dawn, their names sung by voices beyond time. But he also saw the unjust, rulers who had devoured nations, prophets who had sold their words, angels who had abandoned their trust. All stood silent as the judgment began. The first trumpet sounded, and the heavens shook. The seas rose in walls of glass, fire rained upon the lands, and the spirits of the dead stirred from their long sleep. The second trumpet called, and mountains split, cities of stone crumbled into dust. Yet through the destruction, a strange peace filled the air, for this was not chaos, but cleansing. Then came a vision of the great tribunal. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before the throne, not to plead, but to remember. Every thought, every whisper, every hidden deed became visible, each a note in the great symphony of cause and consequence. And Enoch saw that judgment was not vengeance, it was harmony restored. The angel beside him said, Behold, this is the balance of all things. The wicked shall fall into their own shadows, and the righteous will rise into light. Yet both shall know truth, and truth shall make them free. But Enoch saw deeper still. He saw the watchers, bound in their prisons, stirring once more as the light reached even their depths. Their chains glowed, and their eyes opened after ages of darkness. They beheld the Son of Man, and for the first time in eternity, they bowed. We are dust, they cried, and even the stars fade before his face. And the voice answered them, You shall rise, not to rule, but to witness what you have made. Then the earth groaned. The graves split open, and from them came all who had ever lived. Enoch saw the river of souls flowing toward the throne, shimmering like mist, uncountable, endless. Every life that had ever been returned to its source, drawn by the pull of divine remembrance. He saw the heavens open like scrolls, revealing another realm beyond, one made not of stars, but of pure consciousness. Within it burned the pattern of eternity, spirals of fire turning within spirals of thought. This, said the voice, is the new creation. What was flesh becomes light, what was time becomes song. And Enoch realized then that the apocalypse was not destruction, but revelation, the lifting of the final veil. The end was not annihilation, but awakening. Humanity would not be erased, it would be transformed. The vision continued. He saw the old world fade like smoke, its ashes scattered into the void. In its place rose a new earth, bright as crystal and soft as dawn. Rivers of light flowed through its valleys, mountains glowed like glass, the air itself hummed with peace. Here, the voice said, is the home of the righteous, where memory is joy and time is rest. But even within this paradise, Enoch saw mystery. For at its center stood a single gate, sealed and shining with words no tongue could pronounce. What lies beyond? He asked. And the angel answered, the answer you are not meant to know. Every world must hold its secret, or creation would cease to dream. He turned then, and saw the final vision, the stars reborn, the heavens expanding outward like breath. Each spark became a new beginning, each light a new story. And Enoch understood, the universe was not ending, it was renewing itself through infinite cycles, each one a heartbeat of God. But as the light grew brighter, he saw something else, humanity, scattered across future ages, building cities of glass, sailing among the stars, carrying within them the same eternal question. He saw men and women looking up at the sky and wondering if the old stories were true. And he knew, in that moment, that his words would endure. "Tell them," said the voice, "that I am not lost, only hidden. Tell them that the end is written within the beginning, that every soul carries the reflection of eternity. Tell them that the stars above are not silent, they are waiting." Then the vision broke. The heavens closed like folded wings, and Enoch found himself standing once more upon the mountain. The world around him was still, the air clear after the storm. He could still hear faint echoes, the trumpets of heaven fading into distance, the cries of judgment turning into whispers of renewal. He fell to his knees, pressing his hands to the soil, feeling it breathe beneath him. He wept, not in fear, but in awe. For he had seen the end of all things, and the mercy that lies within it. He looked to the horizon where the first light of dawn was breaking. It shimmered across the waters, painting the world in gold. "All things return to their source," he whispered. "Even darkness bows to light." Then Enoch lifted his face to the sky and spoke softly, "The world will forget, but one day, when the stars fall and rise again, they will remember my words." The wind carried his voice across the valleys, over the waters, through the sleeping ages, a whisper to every generation that would follow. And so the prophecy of the end became a prophecy of hope, a promise that every ending hides a beginning, that judgment is not the fall of man, but the awakening of creation itself. Enoch closed his eyes, the vision faded. Yet even now, somewhere beyond the reach of time, the book remains open. The story continues. And the voice of heaven still waits, for those who choose to listen. History seldom erases a book with fire, more often it buries it with silence. After visions of creation and judgment, after the names of angels and the laws of stars, the words of Enoch began to fade from the living memory of empires. Not because they were forgotten, but because they were set aside, moved to the margins, allowed to sleep while other voices grew louder. This is the forbidden legacy, not only of what Enoch wrote, but of what the world chose not to hear. In the earliest centuries, his name still moved like a spark through the halls of faith. Teachers quoted him, wanderers carried fragments, and in desert caves, scribes traced his lines with careful hands. The book lived close to the roots of Christianity, close to the breath of prophecy, close to the scriptures that would one day be bound together and called a canon. Some elders praised it, some warned against it, all felt its gravity. For Enoch spoke with a certainty that unsettled kings and calmed prisoners. He wrote as one who had stood where mortals do not stand. Why then did the West put his book away? The answer is neither simple nor cruel, it is the history of power choosing clarity over wonder, order over possibility. Councils gathered, leaders weighed, libraries negotiated with time. The church sought a single voice that could hold a world together. In that search, many voices were gently removed. Enoch's words drifted toward the edge, still present in memory, yet absent from the center. In the east, however, a different story unfolded. The Ethiopian faithful kept the book as scripture, copying it through centuries of famine and war, sheltering it like a lamp beneath a mantle of night. Monks climbed stone paths to mountain monasteries with Enoch bound beneath their cloaks, children learned his name beside the Psalms of David, priests whispered his visions during long liturgies under the blue roofs of ancient churches. When the Western world later declared him Apocrypha, Ethiopia simply continued reading. Between those worlds, time threaded a curious needle. In the deserts near the Dead Sea, jars slept beneath collapsed ceilings, inside them, scrolls waited like seeds. When the caves were opened in a new age, the world inhaled dust and light together, and there among the fragments lay Enoch's voice again, smaller, older, yet unmistakable. His words had not died, they had been preserved by stone and silence, carried forward by a fidelity no council could command and no empire could erase. Scholars bent over the pieces, priests turned the pages with caution, skeptics smiled, mystics wept. Some said the book was a window into the mind of a community longing for justice, a work of apocalyptic poetry crafted to sustain faith under oppression. Others said it sounded like a report, precise, austere, structured like a ledger of stars and judgments. Many stood between these readings, sensing that scripture can be both mirror and map, that a text may console the oppressed and describe the cosmos in the same breath. But the question remains, why did the West close the door while the East left it open? Consider the teachings Enoch preserves. Angels descending to teach forbidden arts, the birth of giants, the punishment of celestial rulers, the Son of Man enthroned before the rise of Christian liturgy, the seven heavens measured with the calm of an astronomer. These currents cut across many later doctrines, not to deny them, but to deepen them, to complicate them, to expand their horizons beyond the safe lights of a growing institution. Every institution must guard its boundaries. Enoch walked past boundaries, smiling like a man with a key. There is also the fear of misuse. If angels taught metal and medicine, if spiritual powers disclosed the structure of the world, what prevents the proud from taking heaven's tools and turning them into chains? Enoch himself warns that knowledge without humility becomes a sword with no sheath. A shepherd of souls might reasonably ask the flock to read more slowly, to keep their hands warm on gentler books, to let all ripen before touching mysteries that burn. It is mercy, but it is also control. Between these motives, a canon is formed. Yet every time history tries to sleep, truth taps the window. The rediscovery of Enoch was one such tapping. Explorers carried Ethiopic manuscripts across oceans, translators wrestled with old consonants and new doubt, and readers found themselves hearing familiar hymns sung in a forgotten key. The tale of the watchers stood beside the thin line in Genesis, suddenly the margin spoke, suddenly the footnote sang. The throne of the Son of Man gleamed in a room that some had thought empty. Heavenly courts, star ledgers, angelic hierarchies, all returned, not as enemies of faith, but as elders, difficult, luminous, demanding patience. For some, this was threat. For others, relief. Threat, because neat frames crack when old pictures reappear. Relief, because faith is not a cage, it is a sky. And a sky without stars is not a sky at all. There is a subtler reason too. Enoch shifts agency. In his pages, humanity is taught, instructed by watchers who cross thresholds to share their craft. Evil is not only disobedience on earth, it is also the misuse of high knowledge, a cosmic error with terrestrial consequences. This feels different from stories that place all weight on human failure. It implies that the world is a contested school, that teachers can fall, that students can exceed them, that judgment descends not only upon flesh but upon fire. Some hearts love this complexity, others prefer the simplicity of a single stage with a single actor. Churches must shepherd both kinds of hearts. And so the book lived in exile, honored by some, doubted by others, invoked by poets, avoided by administrators. But exile is not death, it is preparation. Enoch's voice learned endurance while waiting at the edge of the feast. When the world grew hungry again for mystery, when telescopes re-enchanted the sky with their cold sincerity, when psychology discovered that dreams are doors, the book quietly returned to sit with us, old, patient, unafraid. What about credibility? Skeptics ask, where is the author, where the autograph, where the unbroken chain? Believers ask, where is the anointing, where the witness of the Spirit in the heart? Historians ask, where does this fit in the forest of Second Temple visions and revolt literature? The wise answer all three: the text is a mosaic, some tiles ancient, some later, yet the image coheres, an old face looks back through cracked glass, and the gaze is steady. If you listen for rhetoric you will find it, if you listen for record you will find that too. The book keeps becoming whatever the reader is ready to receive. That is either genius, or revelation, perhaps both. Consider the danger. Not of heresy, but of success. If Enoch truly opens the heavens, if men and women feel the nearness of the unseen when they read, a quiet revolution begins. Prayer becomes less about requests, more about alignment. Sin becomes less about rule breaking, more about resonance broken and restored. Angels cease to be ornaments on doctrine, they become neighbors, mentors, judges. The soul learns to hear in the wind the echo of wheels within wheels, learns to sense in lightning the trace of a throne. Once a population begins to live like that, empires must adjust, and empires do not enjoy adjusting. Yet the book never commands rebellion, it commands remembrance. Remember that mercy can look like water rising, that judgment can feel like a door opening, that knowledge can become a bruise if carried without reverence. Remember that even angels can fall, and even dust can be lifted. Remember that the universe is a choir, and that silence, in the right place, is also a note. What then shall we do with Enoch now? Read him as history, and you will find timelines to argue and names to catalogue. Read him as myth, and you will find archetypes precise enough to make philosophers blush. Read him as prayer, and you may feel a hand on your shoulder when no one stands behind you. The book does not insist on one approach, it invites the whole person, mind and heart, reason and wonder, discipline and risk. There is a sentence I have promised to keep before you, a line that steadies the tightrope between scholarship and mystery, between documentary and devotion, between caution and courage. Here it is, and may it guide every listening soul. This is what the ancient text says, you decide what it means. If you ask the guardians of canon why Enoch sleeps outside their walls, they will answer with prudence, unity, clarity, pastoral care. If you ask the guardians of monasteries perched on Ethiopian cliffs why Enoch still sings in their liturgy, they will answer with inheritance, revelation, continuity older than councils. If you ask the sands of Qumran why they held the fragments for 2,000 years, the dunes will whisper only this: some things must be hidden until the world is ready to see them. Was the world ready when the jars opened, when the bindings loosened, when copies crossed oceans, when translators set vowels like jewels into faded consonants? Perhaps readiness is not a date, but a hunger. Perhaps Enoch returns whenever a generation becomes bold enough to ask again whether the sky is empty. Listen then to what the legacy demands. Do not wield the book as a blade, receive it as a lamp. Do not chase secrets for power, kneel before them for wisdom. Do not divide over its status, unite in the humility it teaches. Let historians map its layers, let theologians test its claims, let poets drink its light, let ordinary people read it at night and sleep more deeply for having remembered that the world is watched. And if you choose not to read it, if your path takes you along plainer fields, carry this truth anyway, that the human story is taller than we have been told, that our ancestors kept windows where we built walls, that the divine does not fear inquiry. The heavens never tremble at honest questions, only at dishonest certainty. I leave you with a quiet scene. A scribe in a stone room, a small lamp, a coil of smoke, a page half filled. He pauses, listening. Outside, a wind lifts the corner of the door curtain. It sounds like wings, or simply like evening. He dips his nib, writes the next line from memory, folds the sheet into a leather roll, places it in a jar, seals the mouth with clay. He does not know your name, yet he believes you will come. He believes the jar will open, the page will breathe, the voice will move again. That is the forbidden legacy. Not scandal, but endurance. Not noise, but a long, patient light. If you open the book, do so with a steady hand, and if you close it gently, for many hands before you have done the same, and many after you will do it still. This is what the ancient text says, you decide what it means. When the visions ended and the silence of the mountain returned, Enoch felt the weight of his own breath. The heavens had spoken, the watchers had fallen, the universe had revealed its rhythm, and yet the world below him still turned with ordinary dawn. The birds sang, the wind moved across the stones, life continued as if the sky had not wept fire the night before. He sat upon the edge of the ridge and watched the light spill across the valleys. The floodwaters had receded, the soil steamed with new beginnings. Creation had survived judgment. The memory of destruction hung in the air like perfume, sweet and terrible at once. And Enoch, last witness of the old order, wrote in his book, even after fire, the morning comes. For days he walked among the survivors, teaching them what he could remember. He told them of balance, of humility, of the mercy hidden inside the law. He did not speak of the thrones or of the wheels within wheels, he spoke of the small holiness of daily things, of fairness in trade, of tenderness in hunger, of the need to look at the stars without envy. Heaven, he said, is not elsewhere. It begins in how you lift a stone, how you greet a stranger. But he also knew that memory fades, that stories bend, that one day even his own words would blur into myth. So he gathered his disciples and said, the day will come when men will measure the skies with machines and forget they were ever measured by spirit. They will name the stars but not hear them sing. Then my book will return to remind them. They did not understand him, yet they wrote his words anyway. One evening a wind rose from the east, warm, clean, full of salt and promise. It whispered like a familiar friend, and Enoch knew his time among men was closing. He left the camp and climbed once more into the hills where he had first spoken with the angels. The path was the same, yet everything felt changed, even the stones seemed to hum with expectation. At the summit he stopped, breathing the thin air, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his feet. The sky was wide and trembling with stars. He raised his face and said, Lord of spirits, I have written what I have seen, I have told them what I was shown. Let my words be yours now, let them travel where I cannot. Then light descended, not blinding, but soft, a radiance that folded around him like wings. Voices rose, thousands together, neither joyful nor sad, only whole. Enoch felt his body lighten, his thoughts dissolve into clarity. The mountain vanished beneath him. The world turned to music. The ancient records say, Enoch was taken, and he was not found, for God took him. Some traditions call that death, others call it transfiguration. Perhaps both are true. For as he rose through the layers of sky, he felt no end, only expansion. The veil thinned, and beyond it waited familiarity, as if the stars themselves had been expecting him. He passed once more through the seven heavens, yet now they greeted him as kin. The angels he had met bowed their heads, the watchers who had fallen remained silent in their prisons, even they could feel his release. He was no longer student nor messenger, he was record and remembrance combined. The Eternal called him by a new name, Metatron, meaning, the one who measures. His voice became the chronicle of creation itself. From that day, Enoch was both within and beyond time. When prophets later dreamed of wheels of fire, his memory stirred their dreams. When sages wrote of heavenly books, they touched the echo of his hand. When seers traced the movements of stars, they followed the path he had once walked in awe. His presence became the bridge between eras, a reminder that flesh and spirit are not strangers. And yet, his legacy among men took stranger paths. Some worshipped him as an angel, others dismissed him as legend. But through every age, a few kept the rhythm of his story alive, a rhythm that said, "Seek, but do not grasp, learn, but do not boast, remember, but do not fear." His name whispered through manuscripts in dim monasteries, through mystical songs in hidden chambers, through modern dreams that still reach for meaning. The book itself wandered. Sometimes lost, sometimes found, sometimes only suspected. Every discovery of a fragment felt like the turning of a key, every translation like a candle relit in an ancient hall. And each time, new readers faced the same choice, to treat it as myth, or to listen as if the heavens still speak. What Enoch offered was never certainty. It was invitation. To look again at the night sky and wonder who watches the watchers, to believe that every soul can walk with God, if only for a heartbeat. That is why his story endures, because it is not only about him. It is about everyone who has ever looked up in silence and felt the pull of something greater than reason. Perhaps that is why you are hearing this now. Across the noise of centuries, across languages and continents, a single idea continues to breathe, that humanity is not alone, and never has been. The same light that took Enoch still threads through the veins of the world, waiting for eyes that remember how to see it. When you close your eyes tonight, imagine him, a figure of calm flame, holding a scroll of light, walking slowly through a corridor of stars. Hear his voice saying softly, "Nothing is lost, only waiting." Feel the quiet between your breaths, that is where the universe listens back. So ends the Book of Enoch, and yet, not an ending. The story folds into itself, the messenger becomes message, the reader becomes witness. The forbidden becomes familiar, the ancient becomes present. And perhaps, somewhere beyond your window, another scribe begins to write again, as if the circle has never stopped turning. Tell me in the comments what lost knowledge you think humanity is ready to remember next. For Enoch's journey was never just his own. It was the beginning of ours.